Hey everyone, hope everyone is having a great Apex so far. My name is Peter. I'm currently a software engineer at Ripple. Today, I'm going to be talking about MPTs, everything you need to know regarding an MPT, such as what they are used for, why we created them, etc. As well as I'm going to be diving into the more technical side of things, specifically how you would go about to retrieve an MPT and the multiple ways that you could do it. Without further ado, I hope you all enjoy my presentation, and let's get started. First, I'm going to be talking about what are MPTs. By the way, they stand for multi-purpose tokens and why they exist. So I'm going to be explaining why we, the XRP Ledger community, why we have decided to create them and the motivation behind them. Afterwards, I'm going to be talking about the structure of an MPT, so specifically what makes up an MPT and the key fields that an MPT has, as well as how you would go about to create one. Next, I'll be explaining some real-world use cases of MPTs, so hopefully everyone has a better idea on how the world will adopt MPTs. After that, we'll dive into the more technical side of things, specifically retrieving multi-purpose tokens by RippleD. For those who don't know, RippleD is the main implementation of the protocol that powers the XRP Ledger network. For the fifth slide, I'll be talking about some more efficient ways of querying an MPT, specifically by Clio. For those who don't know what Clio is, don't worry, I'll explain more when we get there. As well as how Clio queries other XRP Ledger objects, and ending off with question and answers. So, what are MPTs? What are MPTs and why do they exist? So as I already mentioned, MPT stands for multi-purpose tokens. And hopefully through that name, multi-purpose, you can kind of tell that it's for a variety of use cases. So MPTs are both a fungible and a non-fungible token. A fungible token is a type of digital asset where each unit is completely interchangeable with one another. For example, if I have $1 Singapore and you have $1 Singapore, we both have something of the exact value, right? They are completely the same. For a non-fungible token, on the other hand, it is something completely unique. So for example, Mona Lisa painting, okay? There's only one real copy of a Mona Lisa painting, right? Or in another case, it could be concert tickets. Sure, there are a lot of tickets and you're all going to be seeing the same artist. However, each ticket have a unique seat identified along with the ticket, and therefore each concert ticket would have a different value attached to it. An MPT is also a ledger object on the XRP ledger. So some other objects include like accounts, smart contracts, token escrows, etc. So one of the main motivations behind MPTs is that accounts must first authorize to receive an MPT. And this prevents unwanted tokens from entering your account. So for example, I'm sure most of you, or maybe all of you, you don't want to wake up one day and see in your wallet like some random transactions going into your account. You're going to feel like that's pretty suspicious, right? MPT, you know what you're going to get, and so you first authorize to receive an MPT. Furthermore, MPT is easier to use, so they are meant to replace in some cases or to complement trust lines. For those who don't know, just a quick run through. What are trust lines? A trust line is an agreement between two accounts, and it is meant to hold and transact tokens. So for example, let's take our friend Bob and take our friend Alice. And let's say Alice wants to send money to Bob. Well, Alice first has to create a trust line between her and Bob before she's able to send a token, let's say 100 USD. So as already mentioned, Alice must create a trust line. Next. Next, I'll be talking about some advantages of MPTs. So first, multi-purpose tokens has fixed point arithmetic. There's no rounding precision cases, which occurs in trust lines. Let's take an example, a really easy math example. For the first left side, you see we have a plus b in brackets, and then on the second side, we have b plus c in brackets. This can result in different values in trust line cases. So for example, if a is equal to 1 million, b is equal to negative 1 million, and c is equal to negative 3.14. In the first case, you can see that the 1 million cancels out, and the value is negative 3.14 as we expect. However, in the second case, what trust line might end up happening is with the negative 1 million and the negative 3.14, because the negative 3.14 is such a small number that it just doesn't matter through the calculation. And so you still end up getting negative 1 million, and it ends up with being 0. So advantage of MPT is this type of basically equation cannot occur. Furthermore, MPT is lightweight. They use only 52 bytes, whereas trust lines, they use like 234 bytes plus. And MPT is also developer friendly. So they are easier to reason about than trust lines. So for example, trust lines have many other features that I would say you would need to know, such as like the no rippling or trust limits, without getting too much into it. But to use trust lines, you basically need to know more knowledge and you need to do more research. Whereas MPTs, you can get started easily. The fields of an MPT. MPT fields. So for multi-purpose token, there are two main ledger objects that represents multi-purpose token. The first one is a MP token issuance object. So for each unique MPT, there exists one MP token issuance object. And this is basically has the information of the issuer, right? So who would have decided to issue the MPT? That's the issuer. This object also includes the asset scale. So the asset scale is the number of decimal places that we're doing calculations with. So for example, if the asset scale is 1, then we'll be doing calculations with 1 decimal place, so 1.1, 0.1, etc. An MP token issuance object also have a maximum amount. So this specifies the total number of MPT basically it has, right? So it's like 300, 400, etc. There's an outstanding amount, which is a number of MPTs held by a non-issuer account. And there's also a transfer fee, which is a fee for secondary transfers. So for example, if Alice created an MPT and she sent it to me, and then if I send it to someone else, then that incurs a transfer fee. The second type of MPT object on the XRP ledger is just the MP token itself. So this is a one-to-many relationship. And the reason for that is kind of obvious, is because for each unique MPT, there can exist many holders. And for each holder, that's represented by an MP token object. So for this particular object, it includes accounts, which is the holder of this MPT. It includes MPT amount, how many they own. And it includes MP token issuance, which links back to the issuance account. Okay, now let's see some use cases of MPTs in the real world. How can MPTs be used? Well, for one, MPTs can be used by tokenizing loyalty and rewards. So for example, businesses can issue MPTs for customer rewards, such as, let's say, coffee shops, they want some tokens, and people can redeem the tokens for free drinks. Another use case of MPTs, as I already mentioned, is concert tickets, which they're unique. And just to mention, most people might heard of NFTs here. An MPT is an NFT when the MPT amount is equivalent to 1, because that means it is unique. Another use case of MPTs is with stablecoins and central bank digital currencies. So they can represent fiat-backed assets such as USDs and euros. And this is really great because MPTs include many friendly features, such as like transfer restrictions, clawbacks, authorizations. Okay. Retrieving multi-purpose tokens. This is where the fun begins. So how do we retrieve MPT through RippleD? Let's first set some cases. Let's take our friend Bob here again. And let's say Bob has this particular account, R9AUZ, on the XRP ledger. Now, in comes Alice, and Alice, being one of Bob's friends, she wants to create some MPTs and send it to one of her friends. So Alice would go ahead and create an MPT, and let's say that MPT ID is this one. So first what happens is Bob must authorize to receive this particular MPT, right? So as you can see here, this is basically what Bob sends in. There's a MP token authorized. He passes in his account ID. He passes in the MPT token issuance ID. And now Bob is authorized to receive this particular MPT. And now when Alice sends 100 MPTs to Bob, it's successful. Otherwise, it would have been rejected. So how do we go about to query this particular MPT that Bob receives? It's quite easy. On RippleD, we have something called the ledger entry method. For this particular method, you pass in the account, which Bob does, as well as the MP token issuance ID. And this is a result that you get. Essentially, this is everything that you need to know. Currently, you're on ledger 338. This is the account. It shows that Bob owns 100 MP tokens. And there's also many other informations. And by the way, if you're curious about what each one represents, I highly encourage you to read it up. It's totally public online, MPTs. OK, that's good and all, but there are a few problems, actually. Let's shift the question. RippleD can tell you which MPT an account holds, right? But what if you're an issuer, like Alice, or you're a block explorer or a curious user, which I didn't bother naming, he's just a curious user. You want to ask, everyone who holds this particular MPT, who are they and how much do they hold? Or you want to ask just how many holders out there of this particular multi-purpose token, right? RippleD actually isn't designed to answer that question. And without diving into too technical details, it's because they don't have a holder index. And if you really want to brute force your way to that answer, then you have to scan every single ledger. And that's like 96 million up so far. So how do we solve that? Well, Clio's the answer. What is Clio? So Clio is the goddess of history in Greek mythology. No, but let's actually be real. So Clio is an open source project, and it is an official project in the XRP ledger. So Clio is an XRP ledger API server, which is optimized for RPC calls over a WebSocket or JSON RPCs. And it stores validated historical ledger and transaction data. And it uses around 4 times less space than RippleD. Clio is meant to be used together with RippleD, and if you use it, you honestly are able to do more and just answer more questions. And by the way, I included the public link, so I suggest everyone to check it out if you're interested. So let's get back to retrieving MPTs by Clio. So how does it happen? Well, for Clio, there exists many public methods which only Clio has, and MPT holders is one of them. So what happens with this particular method? You pass it in the MP token issuance ID, which Alice created. And as you can see from this short video, you're able to see all the accounts which hold this particular MPT. You get to see how much amount that each person owns, and you get to see all other info that you would need to know. Particularly for this API, if, let's say, 1,000 people hold this MPT, then this will return the limit that you specify. So if you specify you only want to see 50 holders at a time, this method will only return to you 50 accounts that hold this MPT at a time. And each time you call this method, a new 50 will show up. So how Clio retrieves other XRP ledger objects. So as I already mentioned, Clio allows you to do more, to answer more questions, to empower you. One of the Clio-only method that Clio has is something called ledger. So let's say you just want to ask the question, hey, on ledger 90 million, what are all the transactions? You're just curious and you want to see that. Now, Clio is able to do that. And as you can see, a little bit small, but you're able to see all the hashes of a transaction. And you can query those hashes to see what every transaction is and what it contains. Clio also has something called NFT info, where you pass it in a particular NFT ID, and you're able to get all the information around that. OK, so as a bonus, I just wanted to advocate for a new feature that Clio is releasing. So let's start with a problem. A lot of the community members have been saying that, well, when they try Clio, they have been saying that they have problems starting Clio with full history data. So what does that really mean? Just to give everyone the knowledge. So we have RippleD. And for those who don't know, RippleD, around every 4 seconds, would validate a ledger. And each ledger would contain like all the account transactions, everything that occurred on that particular ledger. Now, Clio comes along, because you're running in parallel, and it takes that info and extracts it and puts it in its own database. Okay. This is good and all if you just start running RippleD and then you start running Clio. However, RippleD has been running for a really, really long time, right? Everyone knows that Ripple has been here for quite a while, and as well as the XRP ledger. So because that it has been running for a long time, what if you want all the data to also be in Clio? That's a problem, right? So there is a new import-export tool which can actually sync Clio to start with full history. How it works is it compresses the Ripple data, and then you're able to start Clio with this data, and Clio will be able to have all the history. So I seriously, strongly suggest if you're a really serious node operator or you just want to get more things, this is a very powerful tool. Currently, it's like about to be public, and if you're really interested, come talk to me afterwards. I'll lead you to here. So with this, as I said, it's ideal for developers, data teams, and infrastructure operators. And it works seamless with MPTs and other historical APIs. OK, thank you. If anyone have any other questions, feel free to, yeah, let's do it offline. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.